Welcome back to the Leaders of Leaders podcast. Today I'm here with a good friend, Dorian Carey. G'day, Dorian.
Hello, how are you, Brett?
Good, mate. So we've known each other for 35 odd years.
Easily, yep.
Makes us feel old.
Mm.
So, mate, I know all about you, but what's your journey into leadership and where have you come from?
Yeah, so I had opportunities in leadership before I even knew that that's what was happening.
Yeah.
I naturally gravitated towards, you know, the way that I think, creating order. So with a lot of my mates growing up, it was very much, let's get stuff done. Let's organize a road trip. Let's just kind of bring people together. And at the time, I was just trying to have a good life. I was trying to have fun. It was a long weekend. So it's like, hey, boys, let's do this.
Yeah.
And as I got older, so it would have been my late teens. So I grew up going to summer camps and I was able to have the opportunity just through working with different people and kind of putting my hand up, that put me in a position where I was able to do some of the leadership roles at summer camps. So this is volunteer work. It was working with kids who were carers for either siblings or their own parents, and Rotary Club would fund this camp. So all volunteer position. But it was something where I had that opportunity to start doing programming, staffing, looking at the budgets, and for whatever reason, I think it was just alignment of the people who were in charge were super busy. I'd like to think it was also partly that they trusted me, but I was allowed to do my own staffing. And I had learnt from one of the pastors of the summer camps growing up, Pastor Wayne French. The way that I saw his leadership was put the right people in the right positions, empower them, and then get out of their way. I think it was Steve Jobs said the same thing. He's like, hire people that are smarter than you and get out of their way. And, don't be the smartest person in the room. So having all that as things that I'd kind of absorbed at the ripe age of 19, I did the same thing. So I had good friends that I was like, a good mate of mine, I was like, he'd be great as the activity director. And so I put him into that position. And I found that my role, again, was just to make sure that here's a program, fit the right people in, and then, like I said, get out of their way and then serve them. So then what I found was the first summer camp, so we had 30 kids. Rotary Club had funded the camp. And at the time I was studying teaching. So I was already in that headspace of obviously, timetables and plan out the day. And here's the activity and making sure that everything's resourced. So then here's the program. Here's the staff. Budget was all sorted. We showed up, and I found that on the first day, I got up super early, made sure that I knew what was happening for the day. Everyone got up, everyone started doing what they needed to do, and I was more just watching it. So then from there, I think I just got very lucky to be able to then see in real time firsthand what it's like to have that team where I don't have to be micromanaging. There are also people that I knew very well, and I was able to get people into all the roles that I wanted them in. And it was a space where obviously, people were just helping out these kids, giving them an opportunity. So it wasn't hard to fill the roles. And from that, it was, I didn't know it at the time, but now I refer to it as servant leadership, was just going through the day and just checking in with people. And what I found by the end of the week, it was partly, so the activity director, he was a gun at what he was doing, and he'd get so focused on making sure that the kids had everything that they needed. So then he was doing the same thing. But then in that space, he was potentially missing meal times. So then for me, I was then observing. So then I would go, hey guys, can we just put a plate aside for our activity director? I've heard he's just packing up the boats or the trailer or, hanging out wetsuits, whatever it might be. So then there was always food there for him. So, yeah, I think getting out of their way was the like staff right, get the right people in. At that time, I didn't have any explicit understanding of, you know, hire for attitude, and you can teach, you know, everything else around that. But effectively, it was people they were my mates. They were people that I was either studying with, people that I'd grown up with. Um, that I just went, hey, well, how do you feel about doing what we do anyway when we're at water skiing for the weekend?
Mm.
How would you like to do that and be in charge of the waterfront for this camp? So that was probably the first real formal experience that I had in leadership.
Yep.
And from there, it was I was, you know, I was studying at uni, studying teaching, and I was working at a clinic, so I was working with chiropractors and physios, and the head chiropractor, he liked to get people to do the Myers-Briggs. So when you applied, so I started working there as a cleaner, hoping that I'd be able to get moved from the cleaning department into the working as a chiropractic assistant and doing massage therapy. And yeah, did the Myers-Briggs. I think I'd done it once before. And from that, he and I had some conversations, and he was like, I'd really like you to be in charge of the chiropractic assistants. And from there, that was probably the first time that I was then introduced to the concept of, you know, like putting people into positions that align with their strengths. So before, I was kind of just doing it based on, I knew my mates were good. Let's do this summer camp. You guys would be great at this. So you could almost go, it was more based on like a feeling. And then in this space, my line manager, the head chiropractor, was giving me a framework to understand then around those individual strengths that I saw in my mates and I could feel. And it was an intuitive process, I guess. And then that was the first time where it was like, oh, okay, so Myers-Briggs, okay, strengths, there's weaknesses, the position, so in charge of the chiropractic assistants, my strengths from that Myers-Briggs then aligned with that. So those two things were probably my first introduction to leadership.
Yep.
And yeah, those two things, yeah, definitely just came back to, I think it was Steve Jobs that I heard it from, where it was, yeah, you hire for attitude. You can teach skills. You can't teach attitude.
Yeah. So then you mentioned you were doing teaching studying teaching at the time. So you've obviously gone into doing teaching and using your degree. So then how has that leadership experience early on guided you through what became the 14 years of being a teacher?
Yep. So from that experience, it was something where in education, like every teacher is the leader of a bunch of workers.
Yep.
It's, you know, so I would frame it the same way as a teacher, where I would have I was teaching high school, so I'd have, you know, 20 to 28 kids, different bunch of students every hour, and I would just look at it like that was my team. And it's like we had a project. So when I did the summer camps, obviously the project was, you know, day one, here's the activities, is what we need to get through. Here's day two, here's the activities. And there's like the micro project. So, you know, how's the waterfront activities running? How's that activity? So all the girls got to go and do like a special activity, and all the boys got to go do a different special activity. So it's like those were their mini projects. Then I effectively started using that same way of thinking, but in the education space. So I taught business studies for 3 years, and there was one of the units where I said to them, like, you know, I was learning about the workplace and it was a very boring topic. It was around data management.
Oh, great.
And I was like, how do I teach data management to a composite class of year 9 and 10 students? So I came up with, well, let's run this whole term as a business. I'm the boss. I created an opportunity so that students could apply to be managers. So I had a marketing manager, I had a IT manager, and I had I'm trying to remember the project, a head of research. So then I told all the students this is how it's going to work. And then we'd start the lesson and I'd have a manager's meeting. So it was just with those students.
Yep.
So then the boss meets with them, as happens in corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd sit down and go, okay, here's what we're doing. You now need to go communicate. So research department. So what they were doing was they were researching whether it was worth selling leather shoes through our uniform shop, or if it was just more cost effective for parents just to be buying them from any other place. So the research was, well, how much can we actually find a supplier? I'd already contacted some suppliers and teed them up to say that, hey, some year 9 kid potentially is going to be calling you during one of our lessons with me sitting next to them and coaching them through it. But it was very much that same concept of, well, who are the managers? Here's the information. And then I got out of their way. It's in a classroom, so I could hear how they were then managing their meeting with their departments.
Yep.
So then the head of research, so every 3 weeks we would change, someone else would get the opportunity to be a manager. So the head of research or the manager of research would then go sit with their 10 students. And for me, I could then listen to how well they had taken our information and then communicated that to the group. And then I could then effectively coach them and go, hey, that was really good. You picked up on that. Really liked the way that you communicated it. Or as a heads up, you actually only said 2/3 of the information. You missed a little bit. Was that on purpose? Are you holding that until 20 minutes later so you don't overload them? And so effectively, I saw it more as coaching. So using that example from the summer camps, I didn't see myself as a coach. I was just, if anything, I was like, I'm just standing back. Sometimes I felt a little bit lazy because I wasn't working as hard as some of the other people. But then by the end of the week, I realized that, well, I've been working super hard for 6 months, recruiting, programming, going through everything on the phone to suppliers, doing all this different stuff. So then at that time, I realized that a good leader is prepared.
Yeah.
And then once I moved into the education space, it was then a good leader, a good teacher is prepared. But then within that preparation, I had the flexibility to go, like talking to that manager, you told 2/3 of the information. Are you being flexible and holding back on the other bit of information, instruction that they need? Is that because you don't want to overload them, or is that because you forgot? So then it's then learning in that space, then different ways to communicate. But yeah, a lot of it just came. Yeah, it's very much like I said before. You hire the right people, you get out of their way. But in getting out of their way, I'm then in a position where I can empower them.
Yeah.
So then that's when it would have been probably about my third year of teaching. I was reading Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and different leadership styles, management styles. And obviously having, I'd be teaching students about the hierarchy. You have the boss at the top. Also, if you go to the humanities, so the history curriculum for year 7s, they learn about Egypt, and part of Egypt was very much teaching students about the hierarchy and Pharaoh being at the top and the priests and all the different as you work your way down. So it was very much part of the curriculum that I was teaching. So then I was effectively learning the language and learning the frameworks for some of the things that I'd experienced when I was a bit younger. But then I was able to put it into practice, one, in my classroom, but then also have a deeper understanding of then what I was seeing as a teacher, and also then learning how that can be empowering. So part of that process was by realizing that my way of thinking was stepping back. I didn't see it as, all right, well, here's the hierarchy in the classroom and I'm at the top. I saw it more as the inverted hierarchy, and here's me propping them up.
Yeah.
So I can only do that if I have a very good understanding of what I'm doing and why I'm there and what the outcome needs to be. But it was very much that flipping from, and I've seen this image so many times where there's the boss in the horse and chariot type setup, and there's all the people pulling it and the
Yep.
cracking the whip, and it goes employees here, boss here. And then the image that always goes underneath it is the bosses at the front going, come with me, and they're all going on that journey together.
Yeah.
And that's where I then see it. That's the servant leadership. It's that inverted hierarchy where there's still that person that is responsible, that is the, I guess, the holder of, what the outcome and what that needs to be. So in the school space, we talk about the strategic strategy. Here's the 5-year plan. This is how the strategy is going to work out. And it would cover all different areas, from what are the curriculum outcomes that we want to achieve as a school? What are the well-being outcomes we want to achieve for the students and the staff? And then there'd also be the business elements to it. What buildings are we going to grow? So, covering the whole spectrum of a business. And from that, it's like, well, okay, well, the person at the bottom, they're responsible for that. They're holding all of that up. And then it's going, hey, do you have what you need?
Yeah.
And it was the more that I learnt the different ways of talking about leadership, the more that I realized it's as simple as get out of their way.
Yeah.
So then, having my next school was then the lesson I learnt there in leadership was there was a couple of staff that I just noticed that it was the way that they would speak was very much telling people what to do, a bit aggressive, very much in that top-down approach.
Yep.
And from there, the next step for me was then, and I literally went and found that red, like no smoking type symbol, and I found just the red circle with the line through it, and I just wrote ego.
Mm-hmm.
And I printed that, laminated it, and put it on the wall next to my desk, because I was like, I need to make sure that I have no ego, because that's what I was then seeing in that space. So then I'd kind of learned about this, and it was almost divine providence was the next school. Then I was in a very strong hierarchy like this. So that next step for me was then no ego.
Yeah. I saw something last week talking about there's two different types of leadership. There's leading from ego and leading from the eco, like the system and like that word. I like that. That's really cool. Yeah. So then, talking about your first school would be more of that eco type leadership, where the second one was more of that ego leadership. And then, that's actually a really cool idea of looking at it and going, rather than leading with the ego and me, it's the ego and us. It's the changing of the wording that we're using there to include everyone around us, rather than just me telling you how to do the job.
I like that, because it's also the ego is from within me.
Yep.
Whereas looking at it from the ecosystem, that's all about what's external.
Yeah.
And the thing that I've found with that as a way of thinking is I can only do that if I've got a strong sense of who I am and what areas of weakness or what barriers are my triggers that will make my ego want to defend itself so that it feels like it's winning by putting other people down. I like that, because that eco, that's very much, it's that external. So then thinking of that, framing that in those examples for me was by stepping back, I was watching the ecosystem play out at summer camps. In the classroom, it's by standing back, I let the ecosystem. So in the senior health and physical education were my main subject areas, and I moved into being a head of department at a couple of different schools in that space. One of the concepts in the senior physical education curriculum is around how our skills self-organize depending on the environment.
Yeah.
So we'd be teaching students. So again, for me, I've been very lucky that the concepts and the curriculum that I've been teaching has directly then literally placed it in a platter in front of me of what good communication is, what leadership is, understanding mental, social, emotional, environmental health, and how it all affects us. So thinking about that then in leadership, and I hadn't done that, is part of the curriculum I'd be teaching students around instead of learning and practicing that one move in basketball or whatever it might be, it's develop the skills. So reaction time, hand-eye coordination, and strength, flexibility in the movement, in the physiology, the mechanics of the body, so that they then, when the environment throws some dynamic system at them,
which it will,
they can respond based on their toolbox of skills, of movements. And so yeah, the dynamic systems approach would be something that, you know, and kids would find it really hard to wrap their head around because it's so complex. But I like that, because then I think in that leadership space, eco-driven leadership.
So you mentioned before about how, you know, moving from that ego to the eco leadership, you got to be really clear around who you are and your inner workings. How can leaders learn that?
The first step is recognizing. So I was working with a client yesterday, and it all comes back to the first thing that we do is recognize what's happening and be able to label it. So name it to tame it is the little catchphrase, because that's easier to remember things when we have little packages to put it in. So name it to tame it. It's the exact same thing as emotional regulation. I can only tame the emotion. I can only respond to the emotion if I can label and recognize what the emotion is. So then in that moment, it's like, for a leader, it's recognizing that, and it's always going to happen, there's going to be someone that we work with that either reminds us of ourselves. And this is also then the exact same thing for parents and their kids. There's always one kid that they struggle with the most. And again, because parents are leaders of their family ecosystem. So it's all the same concepts. It comes down to, it's like, oh, that person, there's something about their behavior. There's something within the way that they communicate. Their even mannerisms can affect people, where I can't control that. That's their behavior. That's their choice. That's them either being a slave to the emotion or them responding to the emotion. Whatever it is, that's their responsibility. My responsibility is then how I then respond to what's happening around me. So it's then just knowing that, okay, when this happens, I feel like I'm under attack. What's my first response? I felt angry, or I can feel angry. I can feel the hair go up on the back of my neck. I've had this conversation with students before where students don't completely know what they're saying. And I'm like, that's fine. You guys are teenagers, you're kids, you're working it out. But they'll say something and they'll include me in the conversation, and I'll say to them like, oh, I'm just going to stop you there because you've just said something that is very out of line. I appreciate and I can recognize, I can discern that you're not actually being derogatory. You're not actually being disrespectful. You're processing what's going on. And I can see that you're actually trying to defend teachers in general. But you mentioned me specifically in that sentence. And as a male teacher that is treated as guilty till proven innocent, I was like, that's something we need to address straight away. And I would say to them, I was like, do you notice that I'm speaking to you like I normally do, but you can probably hear that my throat's a little bit tighter. I was like, I can tell you right now, the hair on the back of my neck is up. And I was like, I would put my hand, because this probably happened about 5 times in the last 5 years, because student behaviors have changed since COVID, which is why I'm no longer in the education space. But I would say to them, I'd put my hand out and it would be shaking from the adrenaline, because I would say to them, I was like, what you just did is in fact a form of attacking my reputation. So obviously, you know, my ego straight away is like, I need to defend myself. And I'd say to them, I was like, the energy within my body, I was like, I feel like I could flip every table out the window within 30 seconds. I was like, that's where my body's at right now, my physiology. But I was like, however, I was like, have I gotten up from this chair, or have I moved from the front of the room? Have I sworn at anyone? Have I flipped the bird? Have I done? And they're like, no. I was like, well, because there's a big difference between reacting to an emotion or responding to an
Yeah.
emotion.
Yeah.
And I was like, this, and for me, I'm like a HPE teacher, so I'm teaching the health concepts. I'm like, literally, I would be able to go, hey, remember last term when we talked about respectful relationship? I was like, this is it. When we talked about communication styles, when we talked about respectful communication in regards to, I was like, I'm making eye contact with you guys. I'm able to process what's going on, and I'm actually telling you what's going on physiologically for me. And I would say that I'd be like, because normally 30 to 40 seconds, that adrenaline, it's already started to dissipate. And I'd say to them, I was like, I now feel that little bit of weakness. I'm like, I can feel my temperature dropping. And I'd kind of like in real time be able to say, this is what's happening. So effectively, I've named it, all the different things. I've named what's happening with the adrenaline, the hair on the back of my neck. I've named the reactive thoughts and feelings that I then has gone through my mind, because I'm a human being after all. But I've responded by then choosing how I then behave. And I can only do that if I know what it feels like to have that, and also then have a strategy in place to then process it out. So that's in that leadership space. It's then, and as human beings, like psychology, there's patterns to behaviors. So it's just recognizing, well, what are my patterns? And that's most of the work that I do with clients in counseling, is just very, very simply, half the time they kind of want to psychoanalyze their partners or their bosses or whatever's going on. I'm like, no, okay, yep. Let's find out. Like, I'd like to know what you're experiencing from them, so that I can then really, I was like, 98% of what we need to be looking at is how you're responding or reacting. So what's your behaviors based on what they are doing? And at a macro level, we have leaders that are, they need to do that for themselves, but then they are doing that within their businesses. So then it's responding to all the different emotions that are happening. It's responding to all the different conversations that are happening. So whether the person is just referring to their marriage, or whether they're just referring to their parents, or whatever the relationship is, I was like, there's a small part of that where it's leadership. Because every leader has to have a strong understanding of themselves before they can ever step foot in the boardroom, before they can ever step foot out on stage or in front of people or whatever it might be. Because at any given moment, and I've seen this play out, at any given moment, someone puts their hand up, asks a question, and if they're not ready for it, their ego comes out straight away. And then you get staff who, I can't remember the exact saying, but it's like, when your staff go quiet, you know that there's something bad happening. It's like, well, why have they gone quiet? Well, it's not because of controlled responses. It would be because of reactive responses. So then it's best just to, I'll just sit down and not say anything.
And you mentioned too about how, as parents, we're the leaders in our families. How can we then, because you moved from teaching into the counselling space now, how can we as parents then teach our children to be better leaders and give those opportunities to them? What sort of things can we do?
It feels counterintuitive, because as leaders, like, so in the corporate space, all right, staff meetings Tuesday afternoon at most schools that I've ever worked at. So here's where I'm, so if I'm head of department, here's my team, we've got 40 minutes to unpack something new. So then it's like, all right, here's the new behavior, here's the new way of thinking, here's the new way of managing files for this learning management system. It's like, cool, all right. As parents, that's a lot harder. Because we're dealing with kids that haven't learned how to name it to tame it yet. They've learned parts. They are trying on ways of behaving. The way that I'd say it to students in the classroom, like this would be like 16, like year 10, 11 and 12 students, is when we talk sports psychology or mental health, it's literally look at the behaviors of the people that you like and respect, know why you like those behaviors and you respect them. I was like, you can try those behaviors on and create the person you want to be. Like, that's all it is. You're learning from other people. I was like, you can take those strategies, those behaviors. Oh, I really like the way that teacher said that. Mine now. I was like, I'll try that on. I'll see if it works for me. I'll make it my own. So the same thing then in the parenting space is, yes, there are times where it's like, hey guys, we're going to sit down. I think having routine is one of the most powerful things for kids, because
Yep.
they're just latching onto everything and anything and soaking it up. If there's routine, it's a bit more of a healthy, controlled environment. And then in that, the flip side is also, yes, here's the routines, but it's also, and again, easier said than done, it's also being present enough that outside of that routine, it needs to change because the child has behaved in a certain way where now's the time to teach them that lesson.
Yeah.
The example of that was one of my very good friends. He's teacher, principal, and he's working more in the educational psychology space. And his son, they had watched Happy Feet, movie I've never actually seen, but apparently there's a moment in the movie that could be a little bit scary. Like any, that's just following the story. It comes up to the climax, something big happens, hero, whatever. So that happened. They were watching it in the class, and there was a child in the room that their reaction was a lot of fear, and fear spreads. And so then the whole class like, it was this kid reacted with so much fear, then the kids around them, and then dominoes throughout the whole class, they were all then freaking out. So then a couple of weeks later, my mate's son has been, not sleeping as well anytime he thinks of it. And there was one night, so 7:00, kids were put to bed. My mate was like, sweet, now's my time to just defrag from the day. And his son came out and is like, I can't sleep. Again, he's thinking about that scene in that movie. And my mate was like, all right, let's watch it together. So then he said he didn't just skip to that scene, because any moment in our lives, things build.
Yeah.
So the whole concept, like a well-written story follows the hero's journey. And that's where narrative therapy can be very, very supportive for a client, is going, hey, let's actually go through this as a story. Is they're externalizing it, but then they're also going through the different steps. So if you follow the hero's journey, it's like, okay, so we're watching this movie. So he sat down and they watched the movie, but more as external observers. So it's like, all right, hit pause. Do you see what's happening there with the main character? Do you see how that's playing out? And then as it was getting closer to this scene, he said that he was like, he'd hit pause and he'd turn to his son and go, so you know what's coming up. How are you feeling now? So effectively, zoom all the way out, he's coaching. He's sitting down with the individual person and recognizing that they are having a response to something in a certain way. So then he's going through it with them. And he can only do that if he's present.
Yeah.
But, and this is one of the things that he and I discussed after it, was he had to wait for his son to come to him with the issue in the moment, with the feelings, without the words to name it. So then as the adult, he helped him tame it.
Yeah.
Because then he then took him through that whole journey to the point where they watched the scene together, and it was perfectly fine because they're sitting in a room and it's just on the TV, and there's been this whole story that's led up to it. So he's externalized the feelings that happened in the classroom from the child that got, escalated through watching this scene. And then from it went to bed, no issues after that. So then
it's
that's where
it's almost like then that the opposite, in that the fear was contagious, in that control's contagious as well.
And it can be shared. It can be taught. Like fear can be taught.
Yeah.
I think there's only two fears that we are born with: falling in the dark. I can't remember. There's one. I always forget what the second one is, but we're born with it. So then anytime working with students in the classroom, there's a spider, I will ask them, like when they freak out, I'm like, oh, which one of your parents? They're like, oh yeah, such and such really freaks out when they, like, okay, are they okay though? Like when you see that parent, like, do they survive? They're like, yeah, they're fine. I'm like, well then hang on, why are you then showing so much fear when you see the same thing? Trying to get them to, when I finished high school, I did a little bit of work in England, and I was sitting in. It was at a summer camp, and we're all sitting, I think, in the weekend of training leading up to the summer camp starting, and there were three very, very big guys sitting in front of me that just jumped out of their chairs, squealing in fear. And these guys are like bigger than me. And coming from Australia, what's going through my head is snake.
Yeah.
Is the
Snake,
first thing.
spider.
But then I'm like, I don't think that's going to be, and they're freaking out. And then I'm looking around trying to work out what's happening. And then a moth lands on the wall. I was like, what is going on? And then one of the guys told me, he said he still has a bit of a fear of moths, but apparently it's a bit of an old wives' tale where if a moth flies over and a bit of the dust goes in your eye, you go blind.
Okay.
So then they all freaked out. I was like, dude, it's just a moth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, all the best with that, guys. Yeah, I was like, yeah, fear's definitely contagious.
Yeah. But then also too, other emotions are contagious as well, and they should be taught more so than the fear. Yes, fear is needed. I feel like fear is necessary.
Keeps us safe.
That's right. But then having that in context and having control of that, that's when we can use it to our advantage.
Yeah. I liken it to, like, zooming out from just specifically on fear, discomfort.
Yeah.
Like we grow in discomfort. We get stronger through making it through discomfort. We get weaker by having too much comfort. So it's like that, the sedentary lifestyle, sitting down comfortably all day. I think it was about 5 years ago, some researchers were looking at it and they likened sedentary lifestyle, so sitting for most of the day at work, which you and I are currently doing, is the new, back then they were saying it's the new health issue compared to smoking.
Yeah.
They were like, it's shortening people's lives. And you're like, yeah, well, having an understanding of blood pressure and blood flow and oxygenating the body, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. So then the discomfort of standing, of moving, is actually then good for us. So again, as finding that, finding the balance between, all right, well, do we all go put treadmills under our stand-up desks and walk for 6 hours a day? Well, no, because then some people start to get, like, they'll be wearing their muscles, and then are they stretching and looking after their body for 6 hours of walking? It's finding that balance between the comfort and discomfort, because you need to have that recovery time after the discomfort of going to the gym, or the discomfort of being in the ice plunges or the saunas. It's super important. It's like the order and chaos. If we have too much order, then people get bored. I think it was can't remember what university did it. They put rats into this utopia for rats. So they just created order for these rats. And the rats ended up creating gangs. They started attacking. They stopped mating. When we talk about discomfort and comfort, I can't remember the university that did the research, but they effectively made a utopia for rats. And in that, they had all the food they wanted. They had their little apartments, super, super comfortable. And with all that comfort, they stopped mating. They started creating gangs. They started attacking each other, and the whole thing collapsed.
Yeah.
So the society with complete comforts fell apart. And so we're looking at that for us humans. It's going, well, hang on, like, we live in a very comfortable society. It's like, I've been calling it the microwave society for probably the last 15 years, working with students. It's because it's instant meals, instant communication. Like, I used to know so many phone numbers off the top of my head, and you'd call, and if no one answered, you called later. If my brother and I, if we were catching the bus into town, which we didn't do a lot, Mum would say, all right, get off the bus at this bus stop. I'll pick you up at X time, and then we'll go to the grocery shop. We get in there, and we're sitting there, and we're sitting there, and we're sitting there. 40 minutes later, Mum hasn't picked us up. You stay sitting there. There's discomfort because we were like, well, what do we do? Like, what do you do?
The discomfort is you get in trouble.
Well, that's it. But then
if you're not there when Mum gets there,
then we're the ones in trouble, because it's like, but then so we've got everything flipped now where I would literally be listening to students calling their parents and telling their parents what to do.
Yeah.
Oh, you need to pick me up here. You need to do this. And it's like, whoa. Like they've gotten very comfortable with getting all these different things instantly.
Yeah.
That then there's a lot of disrespect and there's miscommunication. So that's where it's like, well, okay. So back to what we were talking about, it's like, so as a leader, it's recognizing where I'm too comfortable. It's recognizing where I need to actually understand, all right, well, I need to learn a little bit better about communicating with someone that's going through those things, or managing a team where the first time I became head of department, I was age-wise, I was probably right in the middle. So I think I would have been maybe 35, maybe, no, about 33. And I was head of department. I had people in my department who were 50.
Yeah.
And they had some things to work through also because as a male, there are a couple of them female, 10 to 15 years older than me. And so for me, I was already aware that that potentially could be an issue. So then I would make sure that when we'd have conversations, it was very much us working together. I was like, I don't need to lord it over them and tell them what to do anyway. But I knew that if I even tried that, I was going to lose them and my job was going to be a lot harder.
Yeah.
But I also looked and it was like, well, how do I help them? How can I support them in any way with me here going, hey, what do you need? They can't accept any of that stuff if they think that I'm just telling them what to do. So it's the same thing with students. Because students are humans, just like we're humans. It's students will they'll pretty much only learn from a teacher that they like. And if they think that the teacher likes them and respects them, awesome. They will sit and listen. They will actually go, yeah, you're right, sir. I did the wrong thing. And so then it's like, awesome. That's okay. Thank you for your apology. Now let's do some work. And then they're learning how to develop as a human being, but they're also learning the curriculum that's need to be taught. So at the end of the day, I summarize all of my way of thinking into the ancient Greek axiom, which is know thyself.
Yep.
Which is massive in itself. Know thyself in regards to how you respond to emotions, how you respond to being told what to do, how you respond to all of that when you're tired, when you're hungry, when you're a little bit sad, whatever's going on. Know myself in regards to who my ego is. I've actually named my ego de-ego. So I just put a D in front of ego, de-ego. So in relationships, it's like, hey, here's me, get to know me. But just as a heads up, de-ego just really wanted, like, so I'm managing it, I'm all good. But in relationships, it's like, hey, tell me if you see de-ego raise his head. Because I don't want him to raise his head. I want to keep leveling up and being able to manage that. So then if I'm able to do that, I'm then free then to help the other people around me, whether it's in that parenting role with kids, whether that's in that leadership role with downlines, whatever it might be. Know myself is, I think, the most important thing.
Yeah, awesome. I think so too. So Dorian, from there, I think, that's a great place to leave it. But the previous guest has left a question for you, not knowing who it was.
Yes.
And the question that's been left for you is, if you could have your time over again, what's one thing that you'd do differently?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I very much look at when I was that first year teacher, it's not me. Because if I was to go back, I was like, I'd do things very differently.
Yeah.
It's a great question based on the fact that I've recently, in the last 12 months, left education, started my own business, and am now working with clients where I feel like a totally different person, and it hasn't even been a year since I've left teaching. I've had those moments where I'm loving the work that I'm doing so much that it's easy to fall into the trap of, was teaching a mistake? Like, what if I had done this earlier? But I just go, for me to be where I'm at right now, I needed to go through that.
Yeah.
Also, as much as I've been joking with a lot of my teacher friends where I've said to them, I was like, I feel super lazy, even though I'm running my own business, I'm meeting with clients, I'm collaborating with other business owners, and I'm busy, it's almost like, because I was a high school teacher, I'll never be that busy.
Yeah.
So a busy day as someone with their own business is actually quite nice and relaxing compared to that teaching role. So I've had those moments where I just go, oh, I was teaching, did I waste 14 years? And I'm like, no, I learned so much. I was literally at a cafe 2 days ago, and the young lady serving me, I was like, I know you.
Yeah.
I was like, did you go to this school? She's like, yeah. I was like, I taught you for a few months before you changed schools. And she was like, what? I was like, I bump into students, teaching long enough. I've now taught with people who I taught.
Who are now teachers. Yeah.
So it's cool showing up at a school and going, oh, wow, so cool to see. Or they reach out, they get in contact with me. So, yeah, I look at it and I just go, awesome opportunities for me to grow as a human being. Would I change any of that? No. Like, it'd be nice to be able to go back and, if I was to redo any of those things, I would change it so much. But then would I then be here now? So
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question, because it is something where I'm all about thought experiments, because then that's where you understand the narrative, your own story, much better.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for your time today, Dorian.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
If anyone wants to get in contact with Dorian, I'll put his contact details and for Level Up Counselling in the show notes. So Dorian, what sort of counselling do you do?
I'm mostly working with relationship, and in that space, I do a little bit of work with domestic violence advocates.
Yeah.
So probably 50% of my work is working with people in some pretty complex relationship spaces. So yeah, most of it's in and around relationships. I work a little bit with parents and their kids, and zoom all the way out. Everything just comes back to pattern recognition of behaviors and understanding who we are and why we behave that way. So it's mostly relationship counseling.
Yeah, awesome. That's kind of a good segue at the moment, because at the moment I've got a copy of the Leptin theory that I picked up from the Mel Robbins tour. And for anyone who follows along this journey, they go in the draw to win a copy of the signed book from Mel.
Cool.
So jump on, find me on social media. The links are in the show notes. Anyone who follows along goes in the draw, and that closes at midnight at the end of April. And I'll draw the winner on a video and post it all over social media. So get in it to win it. And remember, look after yourself first so you can look after others. And I'll see you next time.